They said I ruined my sister's wedding, that I was jealous, petty, and desperate for attention, that I chose the one day meant for her to stage my revenge. But I wasn't even invited to that wedding. The truth. She was wearing my grandmother's necklace, the one promised to me in her will, while my parents spread lies about me and begged me to fix her party. On the night of my own wedding. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't yet. Let's start from the beginning. My wedding sounded like thunder and felt like sunlight. The string quartet played at last in an old brick conservatory, while the glass ceiling scattered light across the aisle. My veil whispered when I breathed. I tried to memorize the lemon in my drink, the ache in my cheeks, and the way Lucas looked at me like I was both a surprise and a promise. On the left side of the aisle, 4 rows of chairs sat perfectly made and perfectly empty. White programs tied with twine, reserved placards, napkins folded like unopened letters. They were supposed to hold my life. Mom's perfume, Dad's cough laugh, Emily's dramatic eye roll, and the shoulder bump of my childhood best friend Hannah. Instead, a dusting of pollen settled where their coats should have been. Every glance sharpened the emptiness, a quiet blade between my ribs. When the doors opened and I took my first step, the room rose. Faces I love smiled, coworkers, neighbors, the women from my running group. Lucas waited at the end of the aisle, cheeks damp. It should have drowned out anything else. It tried. But empty chairs shout their own language, and I have always been fluent. 8 months earlier, after I texted our date and a photo of the venue, my sister Emily announced her engagement. 2 weeks later, glossy invitations landed around town, her engagement party on the same day as my wedding. Gold foil, rooftop photos. When I sent my invitations, Mom replied, "We'll make it work, dear," which is Midwestern for "we won't." Dad's reply was a thumbs up 3 days late. Hannah promised to call. She didn't. The officiant spoke steady and kind. Lucas squeezed my fingers. "Breathe with me," he mouthed. I did. I promised forever with a voice that only shook once, not because I doubted him. Lucas has always been a soft landing, but because each vow tugged against a second ceremony happening miles away, where the people who raised me were toasting someone else. When we kissed, the room erupted. Petals flew. Cocktail hour spilled into the garden. My college roommate Jess hugged me hard. I laughed at the right moments and hitched my dress when friends' kids ran circles around my ankles. My phone slept face down in my clutch. We'd agreed today belonged to us. Still, questions slipped through. "Will your mom be here later?" Aunt Dottie, who isn't my aunt but once made me soup, asked in a careful voice. I lied with a smile that felt like a bruise. They got stuck. "Travel," I said. Dottie's eyes flashed hurt for me, then softened. She squeezed my arm and drifted away. By dinner, long tables stitched the room into a quilt of people who chose us. Chicken piccata and lemon risotto perfumed the air. Lucas's best man told a story about him trying to fix a garbage disposal with a whisk and a prayer. Everyone laughed so hard we had to pause for breath. I tried to pour their warmth into the empty space beside me. It held only silence. 2 weeks before I had asked my mother one last time. "It's complicated," she'd said. "Emily's future in-laws flew in from Europe. We can't be in 2 places at once." My wedding is not a place, I answered, calm, because rage gets me labeled dramatic. It's my life. She sighed the way she sighs when the waiter brings the wrong order. "You'll understand when you have kids." That was the hinge finally swinging shut. During the toasts, the sun dipped and everything turned honey-soft. I caught my reflection in the greenhouse glass lace, a woman who looked like me but steadier, and behind me those empty rows like teeth. I lifted my glass anyway. To the ones who showed up, I said. If my voice cracked, only Lucas heard it. He kissed my knuckles. The room cheered. Then the DJ called us to the floor. Etta James melted into Leon Bridges, and the night lifted us. Lucas and I moved like we'd practiced in our tiny kitchen. "Still with me," he whispered. "Always," I said and meant it. We cut the cake beneath a canopy of string lights. lemon with raspberry buttercream smoothed like snow. The knife was cold in our hands, the handle engraved with our initials by a woman at the market who said love is a verb. Everyone crowded close, phones up, faces open. I laughed for real. My phone, abandoned all day, began to vibrate against the china like a trapped bee. One buzz, then another, then a steady crawl across the linen until it tapped the champagne flute. I reached for it, still smiling, still holding the knife with Lucas. The screen lit my face blue. At the top was a number that stopped my breath cold, 52 missed calls. All from Mom. The edges of the room went watery, the sound thinning like someone turned down the world. People were still clapping, still calling for the second slice, but my thumb hovered over the red bubble as if numbers could bite. 52 meant emergency in any language. 52 meant hospital sirens or apologies arriving too late. The frosting on my tongue turned to chalk. Lucas leaned in, eyes flicking from my face to the screen. "What is it?" he murmured. "Nothing." I told the room. To him, barely audible. "It's my mom." I set the phone face down, my hand steady because it had to be. The DJ called for a group photo. People jostled and whooped. The phone buzzed again, insistent, alive. Something was wrong. I felt it tightening like a wire I couldn't see, strung between this warm room of string lights and a different room miles away where my last name was being said without me. Standing there with cake on my tongue and confetti in my hair, I knew the truth. Whatever waited on the other end of those 52 calls had teeth, and it had come to find me on my happiest day. The music was too loud, the laughter too bright, and yet all I could hear was the steady buzz in my clutch. By the time I slipped it open, the red numbers glared like an alarm. 57 missed calls now. My throat tightened. Lucas was busy corralling his college friends into another toast, the room humming with warmth. I forced a smile, excused myself, and slipped through the side doors into the night air. The conservatory's garden was quiet compared to the reception. Lanterns swayed in the breeze, glowing like caught fireflies. My heels crunched the gravel path as I moved farther from the music, further from the eyes that would know something was wrong. My phone buzzed again in my palm, and I answered this time without thinking. "Clara." The voice was sharp, hurried barely above a whisper. "Maggie. Maggie. What's going on? Why has my mom been—" "You won't believe it." Her breath hitched words tumbling out. "They're telling everyone you planned your wedding just to sabotage Emily's engagement, that you scheduled it the same day to steal her spotlight." I froze beneath the lantern glow, the word sabotage slicing through the night. "What? That's insane. I set my date months before Emily even got engaged." "I know," Maggie said quickly, her voice urgent, almost apologetic. "But your mom is saying it like it's fact, and people are nodding along. They're telling her guests that you've always been jealous that you wanted to upstage her. Even your dad, he's over there laughing about how you're not close to the family anymore, so it makes sense no one showed up." The gravel seemed to tilt under my feet. My chest caved inward. He said that, "My own father, I'm sorry, Clara. I wish I was making this up. And—" Maggie paused, her voice dropping even lower. "Hannah's here. She's not defending you. She's telling people she couldn't be your maid of honor because you were too difficult about the guest list." My mouth went dry. Hannah. My best friend since we were 6. The girl I swore blood oaths with under the bleachers. The one I thought was my family when my real family left me cold, standing in a banquet hall recasting me as a villain. "They're rewriting it, Clara," Maggie whispered. "Right now, while you're cutting cake, they're rewriting the story of your own wedding." The laughter from the conservatory drifted faintly through the open doors, muffled and far away. It should have steadied me. It didn't. My hands shook around the phone. Why would they do this? Why on my wedding day? Maggie hesitated. "Because they still need you." That's the craziest part. "What do you mean?" My voice cracked. "Your mom's been saying all night that she has to get a hold of you. Something about Emily's party. The caterer messed up or the flowers are wrong something. She keeps telling people Clara will fix it. Clara always fixes it. She's acting like you're on call for your sister's big night. I laughed sharp and broken. She skipped my wedding to go to Emily's party, trashed me to strangers, and now she's blowing up my phone because she wants me to fix it for her, I know. Maggie's voice was heavy with pity. I wanted you to hear it from me before she ropes you into something you'll regret. A cold wind slid under my veil. For a moment I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just stared at the tiny lantern flames shaking in the breeze. My own mother had recast me as a petty saboteur, my father as a distant footnote, my best friend as a liar. And still, they thought I'd drop everything to rescue them. I don't understand how you're still standing, Clara, Maggie whispered. If it were me. But she didn't finish because my phone buzzed again. This time, not a call, but a message. My screen lit up with her name, Maggie. Wait, I frowned. You just called me. Why are you texting? No, that's not me. Her voice sharpened. Check it. I pulled the phone back. A new message sat waiting, one line of text above a glowing attachment. You won't believe this. Call me when you can. But don't tell anyone I showed you. My thumb trembled as I tapped the photo open. Emily stood in the center of a lavish ballroom, her white dress shimmering like it had been spun from moonlight. Around her neck, catching the chandelier light, was the one thing that made my stomach hollow out in an instant. My grandmother's necklace. The delicate gold chain, the diamond pendant shaped like a teardrop, there was no mistaking it. I'd seen it in photographs from the 1950s glowing against my grandmother's collarbone, and again in person when she pressed the velvet box into my hands when I was 19. Her voice echoed in my head as sharp as if she stood behind me now. This is for the woman you marry, Clara. I want her to wear it on your wedding day. I had guarded that memory, that promise, for years. When I asked my mother about the necklace before the wedding, she told me it wasn't in good condition, best not to use it. And I'd believed her. I'd let it go. But there it was, draped around Emily's throat like it belonged to her all along. I couldn't move. My body felt rooted to the gravel, my breath gone. The photo blurred as my eyes stung. Clara Maggie's voice was faint in my ear, worried. What is it? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because in that single photo, the truth crystallized sharper than any lie they had spun that night. They hadn't just abandoned me. They had stolen from me. They had taken the one piece of my grandmother meant for me, a promise written in her will, and handed it to Emily to shine under someone else's lights. And if I had learned anything in my 28 years, it was this: when my family took something from me, they never gave it back. I lowered the phone, staring into the dark garden, where the lanterns flickered like fragile hearts. Behind me, the music swelled as if nothing had changed. But everything had. Because this wasn't just betrayal. This was theft. And for the first time in my life, I felt something colder than grief, sharper than anger, a resolve hardening deep inside me. The necklace would come back to me, one way or another. By the time Lucas and I stumbled into the hotel suite, the day's joy felt like it had been soaked in kerosene and set alight. My dress trailed behind me in a heap of lace and exhaustion, my cheeks still stiff from smiling through every toast. He kicked off his shoes and collapsed across the bed with a groan, already loosening his tie. I wanted to fall beside him to sink into his steady warmth, but my clutch burned in my hand. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I slipped into the bathroom, shut the door, and pressed play. The first voicemail began sweetly, my mother's voice as familiar as lullabies. Clara, honey. What a beautiful day for you. I hope everything is going smoothly. Her tone shifted as the seconds ticked by, a brittle cheer breaking apart. Listen, I gave Emily Grandma's necklace. She needed something meaningful to wear tonight. Don't make this a big deal, it's just jewelry. You've got plenty of beautiful things. Now Emily's caterer is in a mess. The vendor double-booked and we're short on desserts. Could you call that restaurant, the one in town, and pull some strings? We really need you on this, darling. Call me back as soon as you can." I stared at the phone in my hand, bile rising. Just jewelry. That's what she called the necklace. Just jewelry. When my grandmother had held my hand with fingers thin as twigs and whispered, "This is for your wedding, Clara. It's yours." She'd smiled at me soft and unguarded. "You'll know when the right person comes along. I want this to rest against your heart on that day, so you'll feel me with you." It wasn't jewelry. It was a thread of love stretched across generations tied to my name. And my mother had lied, said it was damaged, and handed it to my sister without blinking. My legs gave out. I sank onto the edge of the tub, the lace of my dress pooling around me like a shroud. For a moment, everything tunneled the tile floor, the hum of the air vent, the faint music still echoing from the reception in my head. My chest squeezed so tight I thought I might break in two. Because this wasn't just about a necklace. It was about every birthday where Emily got the bigger cake every Christmas morning, where she opened the better gift every soccer game I played while my parents skipped for her dance recital. It was about being told, "Don't make a fuss every time I cried. Be happy for your sister every time I wanted something for myself." It was about the years I'd convinced myself they didn't mean to hurt me, that I was being dramatic, selfish, ungrateful. Now the proof gleamed cold and sharp. I had never been first in their hearts, not even on the one day of my life that was supposed to be mine. Tears threatened, but they didn't come. My body felt scraped hollow, too empty for weeping. Instead, clarity slid in like a blade. They weren't careless. They were deliberate. My mother's voicemail wasn't a slip, it was a pattern carved into my life. And something inside me shifted. I thought of Emily posing in a ballroom with my grandmother's necklace catching the light. I thought of my mother sipping champagne, dialing me not to say congratulations, but to demand I rescue them from their own chaos. And I thought of myself standing in a bathroom in my wedding dress alone. No more. I pulled myself up, smoothed the lace down my legs, and wiped the smudged eyeliner from my cheeks. My reflection in the mirror startled me. I looked older somehow, my eyes rimmed with something harder than sadness. Back in the bedroom, Lucas was half asleep, his hand draped across the pillow where I should have been. I lowered myself into the armchair by the desk, opened my laptop, and began. Every voicemail downloaded and saved, every text screenshot and filed, every photo Maggie had sent from the party archived. I created a new folder, tucked it deep in my hard drive, and labeled it simply, "For Later." Each drag of a file into that folder steadied me like laying bricks for a wall I'd never let them climb again. Proof receipts, evidence they couldn't twist. For once, they wouldn't control the narrative. When I finished, I closed the laptop with a soft click. The room was quiet, the only sound Lucas's steady breathing. I slipped into bed beside him and finally let my body sink into the mattress. He stirred, pulling me close, warm and safe in his arms. I didn't tell him about the voicemail, the necklace, or the folder waiting in my laptop. Not yet. Because tonight wasn't the night for collapse, it was the night I'd begun to build. As I closed my eyes, my mother's voice still echoed in my skull. "Don't make this a big deal, it's just jewelry." But I knew the truth. It was never just jewelry. And one day I would make sure they remembered that. The morning after my wedding, the phone was still buzzing. 93 missed calls. 22 voicemails. Not one of them said congratulations. They were all orders, guilt, and pleas to fix Emily's chaos. By breakfast, I'd silenced the phone and slid it into a drawer. It stayed there for weeks. At first, the silence felt like freefall. I had grown up orbiting my family, my worth measured in their approval or lack of it. Without their voices, the days echoed. But Lucas anchored me. "We'll make our own noise," he said, and I believed him. So I threw myself into work. My nonprofit, a scrappy healthcare outfit that provided clinics for underserved women, had always been my second home. Before I'd kept my head down, afraid of overstepping. Now I volunteered for everything no one wanted. I stayed late learning the budgets. I rewrote grant proposals until the words glowed. When a major donor hesitated to renew, I pitched them myself. 6 months later, I was promoted to program director. The title came with longer hours, more responsibility, and a salary bump that felt like oxygen. I used it to fund a side project that had lived in my notebooks for years, a mentorship program for women starting their own businesses. It began small, 5 women in a borrowed library room, coffee brewed in thermoses handouts I printed at home. By the end of the year, it had grown into a community of dozens with a waiting list and local press coverage. Lucas cheered me on every step, even when it meant nights we ate takeout at midnight, yawning over spreadsheets. "You're building something," he said. "Something they can't take from you." We bought a house in the spring, a sunlit place with creaky floors and a backyard big enough for barbecues. Our dining table became the center of our new orbit. Friends gathered there with casseroles and bottles of wine, laughter spilling through the windows. We hosted Sunday dinners, birthday parties, even an impromptu karaoke night that ended with neighbors joining in from the porch. It wasn't the family I was born into, but it was the family I chose. And for the first time, I understood what that really meant. Maggie became my only link to the Whitmores. She'd call late at night, her voice careful as if afraid someone was listening. "Emily's wedding planner quit," she whispered once. "She wanted fireworks indoors, Clara." Indoors. Another time, Dad's been grumbling about how you never visit. Like he's the one who skipped your wedding. The updates came like weather reports, storms brewing, tempests of drama I was no longer part of. I listened, sometimes laughed, sometimes just shook my head. Maggie's loyalty was a quiet bomb, proof that not everyone shared their blindness. And Hannah, my once best friend, acted as though nothing had happened. Every few months I'd get a text. "Saw this and thought of you. Miss you." Always breezy, as if she hadn't stood in a ballroom and recast me as difficult, selfish, unworthy. I never replied. My silence was the only answer she deserved. Still, the ache lingered. At night, when the house was quiet, I sometimes caught myself scrolling through old photos. Holidays, birthdays, family vacations. Their smiles glared back at me, polished lies that I used to call memories. I would shut the laptop and crawl into bed beside Lucas, reminding myself forward, not back. One rainy evening, nearly a year after the wedding, I sat at the desk in our home office sorting files. I was searching for an old grant application when I stumbled across a folder labeled Grandma. My breath caught. I clicked. Inside were scanned papers I'd saved years ago, back when I helped her organize her estate documents. There, in her neat cursive, was her will. I scrolled until I found the line. "I leave my wedding necklace to my granddaughter Clara June Whitmore to be given to her bridegroom's family on the day of her marriage." There it was. Black ink, legal, undeniable. My name, my inheritance, my right. My grandmother's voice rose in memory, warm and certain. "This is for your wedding, Clara. It's yours." My hands trembled on the keyboard. It wasn't just memory now. It was proof. I leaned back in the chair, the rain tapping against the window like a drumbeat. All year I had buried myself in building and healing, in learning how to thrive without them. But seeing those words lit something deep and fierce. Because the necklace wasn't just stolen. It was stolen in writing. And they had no idea I still held the paper that could burn their lies to the ground. The folder glowed on my screen. My reflection in the glass was pale eyes, sharp. The ache that had followed me since my wedding shifted into something else, something harder, steadier. For the first time, I realized I didn't just have wounds. I had ammunition. And one day, I was going to use it. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when Maggie's name lit up my inbox. The subject line was short, almost casual. "Thought you'd want to see this." I clicked. Attached was a PDF, and when I opened it, my stomach flipped. The document was an inventory list from my grandmother's estate, scanned in high resolution. At first it looked familiar, the same list I'd stumbled across in my laptop a year earlier. My name was there in neat print beside the necklace, to be given to Clara June Whitmore on her wedding day. But at the bottom was something I'd never seen before. A scrawl of signatures, executors, witnesses, and one in particular that made my hands sweat. My mother's. Next to her name was a note in bold type, released to Emily Whitmore for temporary use. June 15th, to be returned to rightful owner. I read it again and again as if the words might vanish if I blinked too long. Temporary use. To be returned. My mother had signed her name to a document that not only acknowledged the necklace belonged to me, but promised it would come back. 2 years had passed. I had never seen it again. Proof. Not just memory, not just my grandmother's will. Proof my mother had knowingly withheld what was mine. I leaned back in my chair, pulse hammering. My office looked the same as it always did, stacks of reports, the faint smell of Lucas's coffee drifting from the kitchen. But everything inside me shifted. For so long they had told their version of events confident the truth was slippery, forgettable. But this was a net, and they were tangled in it. I typed a reply to Maggie. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me." She answered within minutes. "Be careful, Clara. If they find out I sent this, they won't." I promised. I'll handle it. And I meant it. Because for the first time I had more than indignation. I had a weapon. Fate, it seemed, was paying attention. The following week I attended a networking luncheon hosted by a healthcare foundation. I shook hands, smiled for photos, spoke about the nonprofit's latest initiative. But halfway through dessert, a conversation drifted down the table. "Biggest wedding of the year," one woman laughed. The Harper estate booked solid for 18 months, and yet somehow this bride secured it with less than a year's notice. Another chimed in. "Oh, I know who you're talking about. Emily Whitmore. I've seen the binder, 12 pages of flower requests alone. The family wants it perfect for the press." I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. Emily, my sister, my thief. The Harper estate was infamous: rolling gardens, marble fountains, chandeliers imported from Italy. More than a venue, it was a stage. Celebrities, CEOs, society darlings all had walked down its aisle, and Emily had chosen it for her wedding. Perfect for the press, they'd said. My mind raced. Emily's big day wasn't just a family affair, it was going to be a spectacle, the kind that splashed across glossy magazines and gossip blogs. A carefully curated image of perfection. And I held in my hands the one thing that could unravel it all. That night I told Lucas everything. Not just about the voicemail or the photo, but about the scanned estate documents Maggie had sent. He listened in silence, his hand steady on mine, his jaw tightening with every detail. "They stole from you," he said finally. "And they've been parading it around like it's theirs. Clara, this isn't just family drama. This is theft. Legal theft." "I know." My voice came out steady, though my heart thundered. "And now I can prove it." Lucas studied me, the quiet intensity in his eyes, a mirror of my own. "So what are you going to do?" I didn't answer right away. The truth was already crystallizing in me, sharp as glass. For years I had endured their lies, their erasure, their rewriting of who I was. But the necklace wasn't just mine, it was the symbol of every time they'd chosen Emily over me. And Emily's wedding would be the one place they couldn't spin the story. Not with the press watching. Not with the whole town in attendance. By midnight, I'd made my decision. The next morning, I scheduled a consultation with an attorney. Not one of the loud, flashy types my parents' friends hired to intimidate. No, I wanted someone discreet, meticulous, with a reputation for precision. His name was Vincent Gray. Polished calm, the kind of man who never raised his voice because he never had to. His office was a quiet fortress of leather and glass, the shelves lined with thick books that smelled like authority. He listened as I laid out the story, never interrupting, occasionally scribbling notes. When I slid the estate documents across his desk, his eyes sharpened. He read them once, then again, his mouth tightening into something that looked almost like satisfaction. "This," he said, finally tapping the signature at the bottom, "is more than enough. The will gives you legal ownership. The release proves your mother acknowledged it and agreed to return it. If she failed to, that's wrongful withholding of inherited property. You could sue for damages, Clara. You'd win." The words pulsed in the air. "You'd win." I felt my chest expand like a lung filling after years underwater. But Vincent wasn't finished. He leaned back, studying me with those precise, measured eyes. The question is, do you want to win quietly? Or publicly? I swallowed images flashing in my mind. Emily standing at the altar in front of reporters, cameras clicking her neck bare where the necklace should have been. My mother's face when she realized the lies had caught up. My father no longer able to laugh it off. Publicly, I said. My voice didn't waver. When it matters most. Vincent nodded once as though he had expected it all along. Then we plan. Carefully. I left his office with the documents tucked safely in my bag, and the first true sense of power I'd ever felt in my life. The city streets looked different, the sky sharper, the air lighter. The plan had begun. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for my family to write my story. I was writing theirs. After my meeting with Vincent, the world didn't shift overnight. But I did. For nearly 2 years, I had let my family cast me as the forgotten one, the outsider, the difficult child. Now I carried something they couldn't touch: leverage. Not just the will, not just the release form with my mother's signature, but the calm certainty that I no longer had to play by their rules. So I built quietly. At work, I doubled down on my projects. Our nonprofit landed a federal grant that expanded our clinics into 3 new counties, and my name started appearing in press releases. Local business leaders began inviting me to networking luncheons and charity galas. I never declined. I shook hands, traded cards, remembered names. I learned that power wasn't loud, it was cumulative. Small nods, soft introductions, repeated faces, until people began to say, "Oh, Clara, of course I know her." At these events, I knew I hovered near my family's orbit. My parents lived for appearances in the same circles of donors and socialites. I didn't avoid those places anymore. Instead, I occupied them with polite smiles, never mentioning Emily, never acknowledging the history, simply letting my presence contradict their narrative. And then, there was Phoebe Lane. Phoebe was a lifestyle journalist with a column that carried more weight than it should have. She had a reputation for uncovering what she called the whispers beneath the chandeliers, the messy truths hidden under polished parties. She had toppled more than one society darling with her pen. We met at a charity auction when I complimented her shoes. She laughed, told me they were a vintage find, and within an hour we were trading stories over champagne. Phoebe liked sharp edges, the hint of secrets. I didn't hand her mine outright, but I fed her enough glimpses growing up in the shadow of a golden child sister, a family obsessed with image, that she leaned closer, intrigued. "You're good," she said once, eyes narrowing. "Most people give me everything too quickly. You let the air hang." I smiled. Maybe I've had practice. We met for coffee regularly after that, Phoebe always jotting notes on a napkin, me always careful about how much I said. I never mentioned the necklace by name, but I didn't have to. She thrived on scent trails. Meanwhile, Vincent and I continued our quiet preparations. Every few months I met him in his glass and leather office, and he updated me with the same cool precision. "Your case is airtight," he reminded me. "The will, the release, the proof of possession at Emily's engagement party. If we filed suit today, you would win. The law is unequivocally on your side." But I didn't file. Not yet. Timing was everything. Each time I left his office, my steps were lighter. I carried the knowledge like armor. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had something better: the law, the truth, and my own growing influence. By spring, Emily's wedding was no longer a rumor, but a spectacle in motion. Maggie continued her whispered updates, always late at night when she was sure no one else could overhear. 3 different planners already quit, she told me once, stifling a laugh. Emily screams about every detail. Mom keeps smoothing it over, but people are talking. Another time, Dad's been sulking about how you don't come around anymore. Says you've changed. Like he didn't change the day he walked past your empty wedding chair. I listened, sometimes biting my lip until it hurt, sometimes just staring at the ceiling in silence. I didn't reply often. Maggie understood anyway. Then came the call that hardened everything. It was near midnight rain drumming softly against our windows. Lucas was asleep beside me, the steady rise and fall of his chest grounding me. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Maggie. I slipped into the hallway before answering. Mags. What's wrong? Her voice was a whisper edged with urgency. Clara. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but Mom's been bragging again. She's telling everyone Emily's going to wear the necklace at her wedding. My heart dropped, though I'd half expected it. The necklace I repeated slow, as if confirming it aloud might make it less real. Yes. She's saying you don't care about family traditions anymore, that you've moved on so it makes more sense for Emily to wear it. She actually used the word selfless, said it was generous of you to let go. A hollow laugh escaped me sharp in the quiet house. Selfless, I echoed. I'm sorry, Clara. Maggie rushed on. I know how much it meant to Grandma, how much it means to you. But they're twisting it, making it sound like you gave it up willingly. I pressed my palm against the wall, the cool paint grounding me. Images flickered through my mind. Emily glowing under chandeliers, my mother smoothing lies into the ears of strangers, my father shrugging away the truth. But beneath the ache, a different current surged. Not despair this time, but certainty. They thought they could rewrite the story again. They thought they could spin me as absent, generous, forgotten. They had no idea what was coming. Thank you, Maggie, I said quietly. Don't tell anyone else we talked. Clara. What are you going to do? I didn't answer right away. The silence stretched between us, filled with the steady thrum of rain. Finally, I said, I'm going to make sure the world sees the truth. I hung up before she could reply, slipped back into bed, and lay awake long after Lucas's breathing steadied beside me. Because the decision was no longer if. It was when. The morning of Emily's wedding dawned golden, the kind of light photographers dream about. I knew because Phoebe, ever the observer, posted a photo of the Harper Estates gates at sunrise, captioned with something vague and glittering, "Today promises a spectacle." I wasn't invited, of course. My family had long since erased me from their head count. But I didn't need to be there to feel the electricity running under the surface. My plan had been in motion for months, and by the time Emily's veil was pinned in place, every piece was lined up. On my desk sat a folder, fat with evidence. Grandma's will, the release with my mother's signature high-resolution photos of Emily parading the necklace at her engagement party. On top of it all was Vincent's letter, crisp and formal, addressed to 3 people: the venue owner, the event planner, and Emily Whitmore. The demand was simple, legal, undeniable. The necklace was to be returned immediately to its rightful owner, Clara June Whitmore, or consequences would follow. Vincent had agreed to deliver it at precisely 3:15 p.m., the time Maggie told me Emily had scheduled her pre-ceremony photos. Guests would just be arriving, champagne glasses, clinking cameras flashing. The perfect stage. At 3:12, my phone buzzed. On my way in, Vincent texted. At 3:17, another message. It's done. Then silence. I stared at the screen, pulse hammering, until Maggie's name lit up. She didn't even wait for me to say hello. Clara, you should see it. You should see her face. Her voice was half shock, half disbelief, like she was trying not to laugh. Vincent just walked in with those letters, handed them to the planner and to Mom right in front of everyone. The whole room went quiet. You could hear a pin drop. What did Emily do? My voice came out low, steady. She's screaming, Maggie whispered. Like actually screaming. She threw her bouquet at the mirror. The planner pulled her aside, tried to calm her down, but then Vincent showed her the release form with Mom's signature and... Maggie trailed off, then burst out. She's tearing off the necklace right now. The photographer's packing up the jewelry shots. Oh my God. Mom's face. Clara, she looks like she swallowed a grenade. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes. For a moment, I let the image play in my mind, Emily in her silk gown, mascara running, the necklace slipping from her throat as the cameras were lowered. My mother's smooth facade cracking under fluorescent dressing room lights, my father pretending not to notice. Maggie's texts started pinging rapid fire. She's yelling at Mom that it's her fault. The planner says the venue won't risk liability. They're insisting the necklace leave the property now. Matt tried to calm her down. Yes, your old friend Matt, but she threw a hairbrush at him. I exhaled slowly, tension uncoiling from my shoulders. Clara, Maggie said softly in my ear. She's crying so hard she can't get her veil on. And people are starting to whisper. They're asking why she bragged about wearing the necklace for months and now suddenly it's gone. Some of the guests think Mom lied about it belonging to Emily. A hollow laugh slipped from me. Because she did. More pings. Screenshots from Maggie, blurry but damning. Emily, blotchy-faced in the dressing room, the necklace absent. A bridesmaids group text complaining, she's melting down. We're already an hour behind. I stared at the images, my chest tight but steady. This wasn't vengeance shouted in their faces. This was precise, surgical, and it was working. By evening, the ripples had already begun online. Guests posting filtered selfies captioned with vague dismay, drama behind the scenes at the Whitmore Hayes wedding. Someone uploaded a shot of Emily on the staircase, bare neckline stark under her heavy gown. Comments piled beneath. Where's the heirloom necklace she's been showing off? Didn't she say it was a family tradition? Looks like someone got caught. Phoebe, true to form, posted a single tantalizing line. Not all that glitters belongs to the bride. I set my phone down on the desk. Heart pounding, not with fear anymore, but with a satisfaction so sharp it almost hurt. Emily's perfect day was unraveling in real time. The story my parents had tried so hard to spin that I was jealous, selfish, forgettable, was slipping out of their control. I walked into the kitchen where Lucas was uncorking a bottle of wine. He looked up at my face, and though I hadn't said a word, he grinned. It's happening, isn't it? I nodded. It's happening. That night, while music and chaos swirled miles away at the Harper estate, I sat on my couch with a glass of wine, the velvet box resting beside me. The necklace glowed faintly in the lamplight back where it belonged. And in the distance, though I couldn't hear it, I knew Emily's screams were still echoing. But louder than her tantrum, louder than my parents' frantic whispers, louder than any denial they could muster, was the chorus already building online. Why wasn't the bride wearing the necklace she'd bragged about for months? I smiled into my glass. The question was only beginning. By the next morning, the whispers had grown teeth. I woke to my phone vibrating against the nightstand screen, glowing with messages and alerts. Social feeds were already brimming with fragments of the night before, grainy shots of Emily storming through the estate hallway, her neckline bare, guests' captions laced with half-truths and speculation. But it was Phoebe's article that crystallized it all. The missing heirloom, how one bride wore what didn't belong to her. The piece was short, but razor-sharp. She didn't name me directly, but she didn't have to. She quoted the will, described the release signed by my mother, and confirmed that the necklace had been intended for me. The closing line was merciless in its simplicity. The heirloom has since been returned to its rightful owner, the granddaughter it was promised to. Within hours, larger outlets picked it up. Local news segments ran with stills from the wedding juxtaposed with stock photos of heirloom jewelry. Headlines danced across my screen, society wedding rocked by inheritance scandal. Whitmore heiress stripped of necklace mid-ceremony. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee, scrolling through the coverage while Lucas fried eggs in the background. My hands shook, but not with fear. With release. The phone buzzed, non-stop calls, texts, voicemails. My parents, distant relatives, numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't answer a single one. By noon, Maggie called, her voice barely containing disbelief. Clara, it's chaos. Mom's pacing like a caged animal. Dad keeps muttering about lawyers, but everyone knows it's hopeless. The documents, the article, it's airtight. Emily hasn't left her room. Her new in-laws are furious. They spent 6 figures on that wedding, and all anyone's talking about is the missing necklace. I could almost picture it, my mother's frantic smoothing my father's impotent bluster, Emily curled on satin sheets with mascara streaked down her face. The family who had made me invisible, now exposed under floodlights, they had turned on themselves. They keep blaming each other, Maggie continued. Mom says Dad should have handled it quietly. Dad says Mom never should have signed that release in the first place. And Emily, she's telling anyone who'll listen that you did this to destroy her wedding. But no one's buying it. I didn't laugh, though part of me wanted to. Instead, I asked, "And Hannah?" Silence stretched for a beat before Maggie answered. "She's gone quiet. Some of her friends unfollowed her after the article. People don't want to be associated with the mess." My chest tightened, not with longing, but with the cold confirmation of what I already knew. Hannah had chosen her side long ago, and now she was reaping the cost. After I hung up, I stepped into my office and opened the velvet box. The necklace lay nestled in silk, delicate and gleaming, like it had been waiting all this time. My grandmother's voice came back to me. "This is for your wedding, Clara. It's yours." I touched the pendant with trembling fingers, not to wear it but to feel the weight of what it represented. Not jewelry, not vanity. Proof. That I had mattered to her. That I had been chosen even when my family refused to see it. Behind me, Lucas leaned against the doorframe, drying his hands on a towel. "It's over," he said softly. I shook my head. "No. It's only beginning for them. For me, it's done." By late afternoon, the narrative had calcified. The Whitmores were no longer the polished family of charity galas and society columns. They were the punchline. Comment threads shredded their reputation. Imagine skipping your daughter's wedding just to steal her inheritance for another. All that money, all that planning undone by greed. Even those who tried to defend Emily couldn't ignore the facts. The will, the release, the necklace now back in my possession. The truth was written too clearly to be spun away. That evening, Lucas and I ate dinner on the back patio, the sun painting the river in streaks of gold. My phone sat on the table between us, buzzing every few minutes. I didn't touch it. I let the names flash across the screen, Mom, Dad, home phone, and fade again. "They're not going to stop," Lucas said, watching me. "They don't have to," I replied, spearing a roasted carrot. "I've stopped." And it was true. The ache that had gnawed at me since my wedding day was gone, replaced by a cool certainty. I didn't need their apologies, their excuses, their frantic attempts at damage control. The silence I gave them was my answer. By midnight, the calls had stacked into dozens more. The last voicemail was from my father, his voice tight with anger he was trying to disguise as authority. "Clara, this is childish. You've humiliated your sister, you've embarrassed this family, and for what? A necklace, call your mother back. Do the right thing." I deleted it without listening to the end. In the dim light of my office, the velvet box sat open on my desk, the necklace glowing faintly in the lamplight. My phone buzzed again, jittering against the wood. I stared at the screen at the word Mom flashing insistently, and let it ring until it fell silent. Because for once, I wasn't the one answering. And that silence, my silence, was louder than anything I could ever say. The week after Emily's wedding felt like living in a hollowed-out storm. The winds had howled, the thunder had rattled, but now there was only stillness. A stillness that wasn't empty, but thick like the air after lightning splits the sky. For the first time in my life, my family had no story left to spin. No clever excuses, no carefully curated image to polish. The evidence was too clear, the spectacle too public. Their reputation in our community collapsed like wet cardboard. I didn't need Maggie to tell me. I could see it everywhere. The society pages stopped covering my parents' charity appearances. Their names vanished from gala committees. A local boutique that once hosted Emily for style collaborations quietly pulled every photo of her from their socials. People they had once charmed now crossed the street to avoid the mess. And through it all, I said nothing. The silence was mine. I didn't post cryptic quotes online. I didn't call to gloat. I didn't even text Maggie back when she whispered about Emily's marriage already straining under the weight of public embarrassment. My silence was a wall they could not climb, a door they could not pound down. For once, they had no access to me. Instead, I poured myself into the life I was building. Work became not just a refuge, but a runway. Within a year, our nonprofit was featured in The Atlantic for our innovative approach to women's healthcare. The article quoted me by name, a full-page photo beside it. I clipped it, framed it, and hung it in my office. When the national press called again this time for my side project, mentoring women entrepreneurs, I said yes. They ran a story with the headline, "The Quiet Architect of Change." My photo appeared again. Me, not Emily, not my parents, not anyone else. Lucas teased me that he couldn't keep up with the invitations, panels, luncheons, keynote speeches. But he came with me anyway, steady as ever, reminding me with a squeeze of his hand that I hadn't built this alone. Our home became a gathering place, not just for friends, but for community. We hosted fundraisers that raised thousands, dinner parties where laughter spilled into the street backyard barbecues, where neighbors who barely knew each other left as friends. There was a joy in those nights that my childhood home had never known. No hierarchy, no competition, no golden child. Just people who showed up because they wanted to. And always in the background, the necklace waited. I kept it in the velvet box on my desk, unopened most days. Just knowing it was there, resting where it belonged, was enough. I didn't need to flaunt it. It was mine. That was the victory. My parents kept calling at first. Dozens of times, then dozens more. The voicemails swung between pleading and angry. My mother's voice cracked with guilt, 1 minute hardened with manipulation the next. My father tried scolding me like I was still a child. Emily sent one long, breathless message insisting I had ruined her life. I never answered. Not once. Because deep down I realized something liberating the moment they chose to skip my wedding. They had made their choice. Everything after that was just the echo of it. By the second year, the calls slowed. By the third, they stopped altogether. The silence they had once forced on me had turned into the silence I gave them back, deliberate and final. And in that silence, I thrived. On the first anniversary of our wedding, Lucas and I dressed up and went into the city for dinner. He'd made reservations at a quiet little bistro overlooking the river. The table was set with candles, the kind of soft light that made everything look like a film still. Halfway through the meal, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the velvet box. My breath caught. "Clara," he said softly, "I think it's time." He opened the box, and the diamonds glowed like captured starlight. My grandmother's necklace. The one I had fought for, bled for, cried for. I turned my back to him, brushing my hair aside, and felt his hands clasp the chain around my neck. The cool metal settled against my skin, warming quickly, as if it had been waiting all these years for this moment. When I turned back, Lucas was smiling in that steady way of his, the way that anchored me to the earth. "Feels like it's home now, doesn't it?" he said. I reached up, fingers brushing the pendant, and nodded. My throat tightened with something that wasn't sorrow, wasn't rage, but something purer peace. The silence had once been unbearable. But now, it was mine. And in that silence I finally heard what I'd been missing all along, my own voice, clear and strong. I smiled back at Lucas, the candlelight catching the necklace at my throat. And though I didn't say it aloud, I thought it with certainty. Yes, it's home now. But the door behind me, that was closed, locked, and the key was gone. I used to think the necklace was just a piece of jewelry. Gold diamonds, velvet box. A symbol of tradition, something fragile enough to be locked away for decades. But standing here now, years after that storm of betrayal and silence, I understand it was never just about the necklace. It was about me. My grandmother had seen me in a way my parents never did. She knew I was more than Emily's shadow, more than the second choice. When she pressed the necklace into my hands at 19, she wasn't just passing down an heirloom. She was telling me, "I see you. I believe in your future. I want to be with you when you take that step into your life." That faith had carried me through the hollowness of my wedding day, through the ache of those empty seats, through the fury of watching my sister wear what wasn't hers. and now every time I clasp it around my neck, I don't just feel her presence. I feel mine. Strong, rooted, unshakable. There are still moments of grief. I won't lie to myself about that. Sometimes I catch a smell lavender hand cream, my mother's favorite, or I hear a laugh that sounds like my father's, and something twists inside me. Sometimes late at night I wonder what it would have been like if they had chosen differently, if they had shown up for me the way they were supposed to. But grief doesn't control me anymore. It passes through sharp but brief like a thorn snagging fabric. Because the truth is, letting them go gave me a freedom I didn't know I was missing. Without their constant rewriting of my story, I got to write my own. Without their conditional love, I learned how to recognize the unconditional, the friends who became family, the husband who has been my anchor, the community that sees me for what I've built, rather than who I was born to. The silence between me and the Whitmores has stretched for years now, unbroken. I haven't heard my mother's sighs or my father's clipped disappointment, or Emily's sharp little digs in so long that their absence has become its own presence. For a long time, silence was punishment. Now it's sanctuary. Sometimes people ask about my family. I smile polite but firm and change the subject. I don't owe anyone the story of my loss or my revenge. The necklace rests in my jewelry box most days, only worn on occasions that feel like they deserve it. Anniversaries, milestones, moments when I want to feel the weight of survival at my throat. Because that's what it is now. Not just diamonds and gold, but proof. Proof that I endured. Proof that I stopped letting them erase me. Proof that I am my grandmother's granddaughter, strong and stubborn and unwilling to be overlooked. The house is quiet tonight. Lucas is asleep upstairs, his steady breathing carrying down the hall. The party dishes from the fundraiser are washed and stacked, the laughter of friends still echoing faintly in the walls. I slip on my coat, slide my feet into shoes, and step out into the cool night air. The city hums in the distance, but here the only light comes from the moon and the glow of the street lamps. I pull the necklace from beneath my collar, letting it catch the glow. The diamonds flash not garish but steady, like stars that have been waiting all this time to be noticed. I walk slowly down the block, the night air cool against my skin, the weight of the necklace grounding me. My grandmother had given it to me for my wedding day, but maybe she had known it was meant for more for every day after, when I'd need the reminder that I was not invisible, not replaceable, not small. I pause beneath a streetlight and touch the pendant cool against my fingers. The reflection in the glass of a darkened shop window catches my eye. A woman steady on her feet, shoulders straight, eyes clear. I think of the girl I used to be, the one who sat in the bathroom on her wedding night listening to her mother's voicemail, believing for a moment that maybe she was overreacting. Maybe it really was just jewelry. I want to reach back and tell her, "Hold on. One day you'll understand. One day you'll be free." Because I am. The grief will always live somewhere inside me, but it's small now, manageable, and the freedom is vast. I don't have to answer calls that only wound me. I don't have to chase approval that was never mine to earn. I don't have to stand in empty rows waiting for people who already chose not to sit there. I tilt my head, the pendant flashing in the streetlight. My family locked me out of their love a long time ago. They thought they had banished me to silence. But tonight, standing here with my grandmother's faith resting against my heart, I realize I was never the one who lost. I smile into the dark, breathe deep, and whisper the truth to myself, steady as a vow. They locked me out of their love. Tonight, I threw away the key. And with that, Clara's journey comes to a close, her silence becoming her power, and the necklace no longer just an heirloom, but proof of her strength. If this story moved you, consider subscribing for more tales of betrayal and justice reclaimed. Share your thoughts below. We read every comment, and your voice matters here. Thank you for listening. This has been a story from Revenge Served Cold. We'll see you next time.